In 1963, work inside a house in the town of Derinkuyu exposed a passage leading into a much larger underground complex. The discovery is often retold with disappearing chickens, a sledgehammer, and a homeowner breaking through a basement wall. Those details are memorable, but they are difficult to trace to a contemporary excavation report. What can be said with confidence is that the modern rediscovery revealed a system far larger than an ordinary cellar. Behind the opening were narrow corridors, chambers, ventilation shafts, wells, storage spaces, stables, places of worship, and heavy circular doors that could close passages from the inside. The network descended through the volcanic rock beneath the modern town. It was opened to visitors later in the 1960s, and the name Derinkuyu, deep well, in Turkish, became attached to one of the most famous underground sites in the world. The popular version of the story then makes a dramatic leap. A forgotten civilization, it says, built a city 18 levels deep for 20,000 people, abandoned it, and somehow left no clear explanation of who they were. But the archaeology does not support such a simple mystery. The exact date of the first excavation is unknown. The capacity figure is an estimate, not a census. The levels are not arranged like floors in a modern building. And the underground complex did not necessarily function as a permanently inhabited metropolis. Derinkuyu is better understood as a structure that changed over time. Earlier chambers may have been enlarged. Storage spaces may have become defensive sectors. Corridors may have been connected, narrowed, blocked, or redirected. Christian communities left chapels and other features that belong to later phases, while the deepest origins remain uncertain. So the real question is not only, who built Derinkuyu? It is whether that question assumes the wrong kind of answer. Was there one founding people and one construction date, or are we looking at the accumulated work of many communities responding to the same dangerous landscape in different centuries? The rock that made a city possible. Derinkuyu exists because Cappadocia is a landscape where geology and human strategy fit together unusually well. The region was shaped by volcanic eruptions that deposited thick layers of ash and other material. Over time, some of those deposits hardened into rock commonly described as tuff or ignimbrite. When newly exposed, parts of this rock can be cut more easily than hard limestone or granite. Once carved, the surfaces can remain stable if the chambers follow the strengths and fractures of the formation. That combination created opportunity. People could excavate rooms with hand tools, remove the broken rock through shafts and passages, and enlarge the system gradually rather than completing the entire structure at once. Geological research at Derinkuyu has identified the volcanic unit in which the chambers were carved and examined how natural joints influenced the direction of walls and rooms. The builders were not cutting through a featureless mass. They were working with a material that contained planes of weakness, variations in hardness, and limits that had to be understood through experience. 1. This matters because some popular accounts treat the excavation as an impossible engineering problem. It was certainly labor-intensive. It required planning, ventilation, spoil removal, and generations of practical knowledge. But it did not require unknown machines. The rock itself made the work possible. Cappadocia contains far more than one underground complex. Turkish cultural authorities estimate that the wider region has well over 100 underground settlements of different sizes. They are concentrated where the geology is favorable and near surface communities that could use them. That pattern weakens the idea of Derinkuyu as an isolated project created by a secret group. It belongs to a regional tradition of cutting homes, storage rooms, churches, animal shelters, and defensive spaces into volcanic rock. The surface and underground worlds were connected. A household might have a cellar beneath a building. A cellar could connect to another chamber. A local refuge could be expanded after a raid. Separate sectors could eventually become part of a larger network. The result can look like a master-planned city even when it developed through repeated additions. This is the first major clue to the builders. Derinkuyu was not simply constructed in Cappadocia. It was produced by a Cappadocian way of using the landscape. One that made stone behave almost like architecture waiting to be released. What Derinkuyu actually contains. The scale of Derinkuyu is real, but its most repeated measurements require caution. The official museum description gives the complex an approximate depth of 85 meters. Academic and engineering studies have repeated claims of as many as 18 levels and a sheltering capacity of up to 20,000 people. Other modern studies describe roughly 50 meters of investigated depth and emphasize that the known spaces do not form a neat sequence of apartment-like floors. That disagreement is not evidence of concealment. It reflects the difficulty of describing an organic underground network. A chamber may connect directly to one lower level in one direction and two lower levels in another. Blocked corridors, private property above the site, collapses, restoration, and unexcavated sectors all complicate the plan. The number 20,000 should therefore be treated as a capacity estimate under particular assumptions. It does not prove that 20,000 people live there permanently, or that they occupied every chamber at the same time. What can be observed is a system designed to support temporary concentration. Stables near the upper areas would keep animals from being taken through the deepest passages. Storage rooms could hold grain, oil, wine, and tools. Kitchens and food processing spaces reduced the need to return to the surface immediately. Wells and shafts supported water and air. Communal rooms and religious spaces served groups rather than isolated households. The corridors also reveal a defensive logic. Many are narrow enough that attackers could not advance in large numbers. Circular stone doors could be rolled across selected passages from the protected side. These doors did not transform the entire underground city into one sealed bunker. They divided it into defensible compartments. That distinction is important. A single entrance would be a dangerous weakness, and the broader complex appears to have had multiple connections with buildings and sectors above it. What mattered was the ability to slow movement, protect deeper spaces, and separate an exposed zone from people farther below. The architecture is therefore neither a palace nor a mine. It is a settlement system shaped by emergency. Derinkuyu contains evidence for sleeping, worship, storage, animals, food, water, communication, and defense. But the rooms do not tell us the name of the first excavator. They tell us something more practical: the people who, too, expanded the network expected danger to arrive from the surface, and they designed time itself into the structure. Time to hide, time to close a door, time to wait, and time for the threat to pass. The first builder's problem. Three groups are commonly presented as the original builders: the Hittites, the Phrygians, and Byzantine Christians. The Hittite theory pushes the beginning into the second millennium before the Common Era. The Hittite state controlled much of central Anatolia and built sophisticated fortifications above ground. Supporters of the theory argue that rock-cut chambers could have served as hiding places during political collapse or invasion. But the evidence tying Derinkuyu itself to a Hittite construction program is weak. No surviving Hittite inscription identifies the site. No securely published construction layer proves that the defensive network existed in its later form. During the Hittite period, the idea remains possible for early cavities, but possibility is not a date. The Phrygian theory is often placed around the 8th to 7th centuries before the Common Era. Phrygian communities are known for rock-cut architecture in Anatolia, and their period fits some traditional claims about the earliest chambers. Yet again, the key problem is direct attribution. Derinkuyu has not produced a foundation text or a clearly sealed archaeological context that allows the entire complex to be assigned to Phrygian builders. A famous ancient text is sometimes introduced as proof. In the 4th century before the Common Era, Xenophon described underground houses with well-like entrances, space for families and animals, stored grain, and barley. Drink. This is genuine evidence that underground domestic architecture existed in the wider region. But Xenophon was describing villages in Armenia during the march recorded in the Anabasis, not Derinkuyu. His account proves a tradition, not an address. The Byzantine theory has a different strength. It does not depend on proving the first cut in the rock. It explains the organized defensive form visible today. UNESCO identifies Cappadocia as rock-hewn Christian habitat from the 4th century onward and says subterranean. Towns such as Derinkuyu and Kemakli served as refuges during periods of Arab invasion. Turkey's Ministry of Culture has dated Derinkuyu's construction, in its public interpretation, to approximately the 9th and 10th centuries. A major recent specialist study places the broad expansion of Cappadocian underground shelters between the 7th and 11th centuries, when Arab raids repeatedly affected Byzantine territory. These dates do not eliminate older beginnings. They separate two questions that are often confused. Who first cut a room beneath Derinkuyu? And who transformed existing underground spaces into the integrated defensive refuge that survives today? The first question remains open. The second points much more strongly toward Byzantine-era communities. If evidence-first historical mysteries are what you value, consider subscribing. The aim is not to destroy the wonder, but to distinguish a strong explanation from an attractive guess. The Byzantine refuge theory. The Byzantine explanation becomes stronger when Derinkuyu is placed inside the military geography of medieval Anatolia. From the 7th century onward, the Byzantine Empire faced repeated Arab campaigns across the Taurus frontier and into central Anatolia. Raiding forces did not need to conquer and occupy every settlement to cause devastation. They could seize food, animals, valuables, and captives, then withdraw before a larger army responded. 3. For a rural community, the strategic problem was different from defending a major walled city. Villagers could not defeat a mobile raiding force in open battle. They needed a way to disappear quickly while denying the attackers the most valuable prizes. An underground refuge answered that problem. The population could move below with portable food, tools, children, and selected animals. Grain already stored underground would remain protected. Narrow corridors would cancel much of the attacker's numerical advantage. Stone doors could isolate sectors. Ventilation shafts would allow people to wait after the settlement above had been searched or burned. The goal was not to live underground forever. It was to survive the dangerous interval. This helps explain why the complex includes both domestic and defensive features. A purely military bunker would not require wine presses, stables, food stores, and chapels. A normal permanent city would not need so many choke points and internal barriers. Derinkuyu combines the two because it was designed for a community in emergency. Religious features also fit the Byzantine period. The underground complex contains Christian spaces, including a large cruciform church in a deeper zone. Their presence proves Christian use and expansion, though it does not automatically date every corridor around them. Recent scholarship argues that the great spread of Cappadocia's underground shelters is best explained by the Arab-Byzantine conflict between roughly the mid-7th and early 11th centuries. This conclusion is based not on one inscription, but on the combination of historical pressure, defensive architecture, settlement patterns, and the relationship between underground sectors and surface villages. There is still uncertainty. Not every shelter must have been built in the same decade. Some may have been enlarged during later insecurity, including Seljuk, Mongol, or local conflicts. Older storage chambers could be incorporated into medieval defenses. But the theory explains the architecture without requiring a vanished supercivilization. It also explains why so many sites exist across the region. The builders were not one royal workforce creating one secret capital. They were communities repeatedly applying a regional survival technology. Derinkuyu's scale may be exceptional. Its logic was shared. A defensive machine cut into stone. The most revealing features of Derinkuyu are not its largest rooms. They are the places where movement becomes difficult. A surface attacker entering a broad hall can use numbers. An attacker forced into a low, narrow passage loses that advantage. He cannot easily turn, raise a weapon, or see what lies ahead. The defender knows the route. The attacker does not. Now add a circular stone door. These doors are often called millstone doors because of their shape, although they were defensive barriers rather than grain-grinding stones. They were positioned so that people on the protected side could roll them across a passage. Once closed, the surrounding rock limited access to their edges, making them difficult to move from the attacker's side. The central hole has inspired dramatic claims about spears being thrust through it. That may have been possible in some circumstances, but the hole could also support observation, handling, or communication. The safest interpretation is that the doors controlled corridors and bought time. 4. Other features worked with them. Changes in floor level disrupted a rush. Tight turns reduced visibility. Small communication shafts could carry sound between zones. Vertical access points complicated movement. Multiple internal sectors meant that losing one corridor did not necessarily expose the entire refuge. This was defense through friction. A modern analogy would be a ship divided by watertight doors. The purpose is not to make damage impossible. It is to prevent one breach from becoming total failure. The analogy has limits because Derinkuyu was not a mechanically sealed structure, but the principle is similar: compartmentalize the threat. The ventilation network made that compartmentalization survivable. Fresh air could reach deep spaces through major shafts and smaller channels. The engineering challenge was to maintain circulation without creating obvious attack routes from the surface. Water was equally important. The complex contains wells and vertical shafts, although popular claims that every well was protected from poisoning should be treated cautiously unless tied to a specific surveyed feature. The architecture shows disciplined adaptation. The builders understood crowd movement, panic, smoke, animals, food storage, and the danger of a blocked exit. They also understood that no defense is absolute. An enemy willing to remain for weeks could wait, watch exits, contaminate resources, or attempt excavation. Underground refuge worked best against raids. Violent events with limited time and specific objectives, rather than against a patient siege by an army controlling the whole region. Derinkuyu was therefore powerful because it matched the threat. It did not defeat invaders. It made the community harder to capture, harder to loot, and more expensive to pursue. How people survived below ground. The phrase, underground city, creates an image of ordinary urban life transferred beneath the earth. Derinkuyu was more constrained than that. Light would come from oil lamps and small flames. Air quality would depend on ventilation, crowd size, cooking, animals, and the condition of the shafts. Smoke and smell would accumulate. Narrow passages would slow movement. Waste disposal would become a serious problem during a long stay. The upper zones appear to have held stables, which was practical because large animals did not need to be driven through the deepest corridors. Their presence also reveals the economic purpose of the refuge. Livestock represented wealth, transport, food, and future farming. Saving people while leaving every animal outside would still allow raiders to destroy the community's ability to recover. Food storage was central. Grain, dried goods, oil, and wine could survive underground conditions better than fresh produce. Pressing and storage spaces suggest that parts of the system were used routinely, not only after an alarm. A cellar maintained during peace could become emergency infrastructure during war. This dual use helps explain how the complex could grow without an impossible construction campaign. Families and communities benefited from underground storage even when no invasion occurred. Each enlargement had value. Later, passages between useful spaces could create a larger refuge. Water and ventilation determined the maximum duration of occupation. Capacity estimates based only on floor area can be misleading because humans need more than a place to stand. They need breathable air, drinkable water, food, sanitation, and controlled movement. The often repeated figure of 20,000 people may describe a theoretical emergency capacity across the broader complex. It should not be imagined as a verified residential population living comfortably for years. 5. The probable experience was closer to an evacuation shelter. Families arrived carrying what they could. Social order mattered. Access to stores had to be controlled. Lamps had to be rationed. Children and animals had to be kept quiet when danger was close. Religious spaces offered ritual, reassurance, and organization. The environment may also have provided climatic advantages. Underground rooms remain cooler in summer and warmer in winter than exposed surface buildings. Turkish cultural authorities identify this temperature stability as one reason subterranean spaces remained useful. But comfort was relative. The safest place during a raid could still be crowded, dark, and frightening. This is where the scale of Derinkuyu becomes human. Its achievement is not that thousands of people supposedly chose to abandon the sun. It is that communities created a second version of their settlement, one designed for the moments when normal life above ground became impossible. The myth of the permanent metropolis. Many documentaries describe Derinkuyu as an ancient metropolis where 20,000 people lived permanently beneath the surface. That interpretation is possible to visualize and easy to market. It is also probably wrong. Specialists increasingly prefer terms such as underground shelter, refuge, or settlement because city implies continuous urban life, centralized planning, and a stable population. Derinkuyu has communal spaces and an extraordinary scale, but its defensive organization points toward intermittent use connected to the surface town. This correction resolves several apparent mysteries. Why are the passages so narrow if residents moved through them every day? Because restricting movement was useful during attack. Why place stables near the upper levels? Because animals were being moved into protection, not raised permanently. In the deepest chambers. Why build doors that isolate sectors? Because the system expected intrusion. Why is the plan so irregular? because it expanded organically rather than according to one urban blueprint. The rediscovery story also needs correction. Derinkuyu was not an untouched time capsule sealed since antiquity. Local communities knew and used rock-cut spaces across Cappadocia for centuries. Some underground chambers continued to function as storage or refuges into the modern era. The 1963 discovery revealed the scale and connectivity of a hidden network, not necessarily the existence of underground rooms unknown to every local person. The famous chicken story may preserve a genuine local memory, but it became popular through later retellings. Without a contemporary report, it should be presented as folklore surrounding the rediscovery rather than established fact. The same caution applies to the supposed 5-mile tunnel connecting Derinkuyu directly to Cappadocia. Connections between underground systems are plausible, and passages extend beneath modern settlements, but the specific continuous tunnel claim is frequently repeated without adequate published survey evidence. None of these corrections makes Derinkuyu less remarkable. They make the achievement more intelligible. Communities did not excavate a fantasy city for a population that rejected the surface. They turned geology, storage traditions, religious life, and defensive necessity into a survival network. 6. Mystery channels often protect the mystery by rejecting ordinary explanations. Derinkuyu shows the opposite. The strongest ordinary explanation, many generations adapting existing chambers during repeated periods of danger, is more impressive than the idea of a single forgotten architect. It replaces one miracle with centuries of organized labor. A city built by many generations. The most realistic construction history begins with small spaces rather than the deepest chamber. A family or community cuts a storage room into the soft volcanic rock. Another chamber is added. A shaft brings air or removes spoil. A passage connects a cellar to a nearby property. During a period of insecurity, the entrance is hidden or strengthened. Later generations inherit the spaces. They enlarge them, connect them, and add defensive barriers. A Christian community creates a chapel. A growing settlement expands food storage. A raid exposes a weakness in one corridor, so a new route or stone door is cut. The system becomes deeper and more complex because each phase responds to a practical need. This model explains why assigning one ethnic name to the entire complex is so difficult. The earliest excavators could have lived centuries before the people who created the most recognizable defensive architecture. Phrygian, Hellenistic, Roman, Byzantine, Seljuk, and later communities occupied Cappadocia in sequence, sometimes reusing the same rock-cut environments. Reuse can erase evidence as well as preserve it. A new doorway destroys part of an older wall. A chamber is enlarged. Surfaces are scraped clean. Objects are removed when a community leaves. Later occupants bring their own pottery, tools, and religious symbols into rooms first cut for another purpose. Derinkuyu also sits beneath a living town, limiting the kind of excavation possible at an open archaeological site. Researchers cannot simply remove the modern settlement to expose every ancient entrance and construction phase. The absence of a clear foundation layer is therefore understandable. It is not proof that archaeologists are hiding the answer. It is the result of a monument created through subtraction, reuse, and incomplete access. The best current synthesis is cautious. Underground building traditions in Anatolia are ancient. Some cavities at Derinkuyu may predate Christianity. Direct evidence for a Hittite or Phrygian master plan is lacking. Christian use is certain. The highly organized refuge system is most convincingly associated with Byzantine communities facing repeated raids between the 7th and 11th Centuries, with later reuse and modification. That conclusion may change if secure archaeological dating appears. A sealed deposit, inscription, tool assemblage, or newly documented sector could move the timeline. Until then, the honest answer to "who built it" is plural. People of Cappadocia built it, not all at once, not for one reason, and not under one name. What the underground city can prove. What is confirmed? Derinkuyu is a vast rock-cut underground settlement beneath a modern town in Cappadocia. It reaches extraordinary depth, contains hundreds of connected spaces, and includes ventilation shafts, wells, storage rooms, stables, religious areas, and defensive stone doors. Its geology made excavation unusually practical. Christian communities used and expanded it, and the complex functioned as a refuge during periods of danger. What is probable? 7. The system developed in phases. Some chambers may be older, while much of the integrated defensive architecture was expanded during the Byzantine era, particularly in response to Arab raids from the 7th to 11th centuries. The complex was connected to life above ground and used more like an emergency shelter than a permanently occupied subterranean capital. What remains uncertain? The date of the first chamber. The identity of the earliest excavators. The exact maximum depth and total number of levels. The number of people who could remain below safely, and for how long. The full extent of blocked or inaccessible sectors. The existence of every tunnel claimed in popular accounts. Derinkuyu is not mysterious because the evidence points nowhere. It is mysterious because the structure records a process rather than a single event. A temple may preserve the name of a ruler. A fortress may have a dated inscription. An underground refuge can grow silently. Its builders remove rock instead of adding commemorative stone. Its purpose is concealment. Its success depends on not being visible. That is the final reversal. The lack of a founding monument is not surprising. Derinkuyu was not built to announce power. It was built to make a population disappear when power arrived from outside. The site should be protected from two opposite mistakes, dismissing it as primitive caves, and exaggerating it into evidence of a lost supercivilization. The real achievement lies between them. Ordinary communities, working with simple tools and accumulated knowledge, created a defensive environment sophisticated enough to protect people, animals, food, water, and faith beneath an exposed landscape. The next time a headline claims that one ancient people built 18 perfect floors for 20,000 permanent residents, inspect the evidence behind each part of the sentence. Ask where the number came from. Ask whether the date belongs to the first cut, the latest church, or the period of greatest expansion. Ask whether the word city describes how the place was actually used. And then consider the question Derinkuyu leaves open. If a structure can be built by many generations, transformed by every crisis, and remembered under none of its original names, who deserves to be called its architect? 8.